All right, I think we should get started now. Hello, and thank you all for joining us tonight for this presentation from James Castle House resident Tania Alvarez. My name is Kristen Hill, and I'm the Cultural Sites Program Coordinator for the James Castle House. I'm here tonight with Jeff Wood, who will be providing ASL interpretation for this event, and of course, Tania Alvarez. Before we move into this event, I would like to give a little introduction to the James Castle House. So for anyone who is unfamiliar with us, the James Castle House celebrates the life and work of American artist James Castle through exhibitions, community programs, research, residency programs, and conservation of the historic spaces where Castle lived and worked for over 4 decades. The James Castle House is a program of the Boise City Department of Arts and History, which offers many other services, including public art, history programs, archives, cultural grants, and care and conservation. I want to thank the City of Boise for its ongoing support and for remaining committed to our work at the Arts and History Department. We would also like to acknowledge the broader history of the land the James Castle House sits on. We recognize the ancestral, cultural, traditional, and unceded territory of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Northern Paiute people whose land the site is on today. So thank you again for joining us today and for your continued support of the arts and cultural community. Before we jump into things with Tania tonight, I would like to mention the incredible show that we have up in the gallery right now, titled Ways of Knowing. This exhibition was thoughtfully created by guest curator Andre Merrill, who has worked closely with James Castle's artwork for more than 2 decades, working as the collection manager for the James Castle Collection and Archive. Merrill selected over 130 pieces of artwork to share, which give us a glimpse into the depth and breadth of Castle's immense body of work. This exhibition will only be up for a limited duration, so please make sure to visit us before April 30th to see this beautiful show. We will also have a curatorial talk with Andre Merrill over Zoom on Friday, March 4th from 6 to 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And we hope that you can tune into that as well. So you can find more information about this on our website. And now I would like to move on to the main event. We're so excited for Tania Alvarez to share with us tonight. And after her presentation is done, we will have a question and answer period. So please be sure, as we're going through this presentation, if you come up with any questions or thoughts that you have, just pop them into the chat or the Q&A and we will address them at the end. Tania Alvarez is a mixed media artist from New York. Her work investigates memory by capturing places and moments through rich textures, colors, and perspectives of her lived experience. In paintings, collages, and fiber, Alvarez weaves memory and material into a visceral diary of her life. Alvarez received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Pratt Institute and a Master of Fine Arts from the New York Academy of Art. She has exhibited her work internationally with group shows in London, Norway, China, and across the United States. She is a recipient of the Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation Grant and has been awarded residencies at the studios at Mass MoCa, Sam and Adele Golden Foundation, and Cuttyhunk Island, and the James Castle House. We have been fans of Tania's work for a really long time. So she first applied to the James Castle House residency in 2019. We were very sad that we could not offer her a term at that point, but we're so glad that she reapplied and that we are able to have her here with us now. Tania arrived in Boise at the beginning of February, and she's already made several amazing pieces. And we cannot wait to see what the next couple of months have in store and to share all of this with you through her upcoming events. So please welcome Tania Alvarez.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Kristen, for the introduction. I'm going to begin with, of course, my slides are not working. Okay. I'm going to start with a few artists that I admire and a few that I've looked at throughout the years. First is Gertrude Abercrombie. This piece is White Horse. Gertrude was a 20th century American surrealist from Chicago who created intimate, small-scaled work. She once said, "It's always myself that I paint." I find this really interesting because you rarely see a figure in her works, but there is such a beautiful story being told in each piece of a life we can only imagine. I'm inspired by the idea of self-portraiture through intimate portals that are devoid of human presence. In this piece, which is only 1 by 1 inches, 7 by 7 inches framed, the accentuation of scale and perspective due to the framing is something I love about this piece. I'm unsure if this was a decision made by Gertrude herself, but it is an interesting concept that I have thought a lot about in terms of framing and composition in my own work, leading a viewer in closer, and here it heightens the sense of intimacy. Mama Anderson is another artist I really love. She's a Swedish contemporary artist. She's inspired by film, theater, theater sets, and period interiors. Her compositions are often dreamlike and expressive. I'm really drawn to the dreamlike or washy application of paint that's often unexpectedly contrasted with thicker and more opaque areas of paint. Her finished and unfinished quality of the surface leaves a lot of room for interpretation and allows the viewer to insert themselves more easily in the scene. De Chirico is an Italian artist. He was born in Greece in 1888. I read that De Chirico found inspiration in the unexpected sensations that familiar places or things themselves produced in him. It reminds me of the feeling of deja vu, or something that I think in a lot of my work is a sense of disassociation, the feeling of being in one place, but simultaneously being in a separate psychological space, a type of out-of-body experience that I've been exploring, particularly in response to stress or trauma. In some ways, these paintings take me to that dream space. In this piece, it's a good example of his use of illogical perspective, which he was really known for. There's many uneasy, flattened spatial structures, and there appears to be a disinterest in rendering. He creates an illusion of depth with bold, simple planes of colors and shapes, something that I also experiment a lot with in my work. Jennifer Packer, I actually took this show at the Whitney a few months ago. This work is created on a free floating canvas that's suspended by pins on the wall and completely consumes you as you enter the gallery. There's a beautiful rhythm that is created by her washy paint application. And similarly to Mama Anderson, those areas are juxtaposed against more thickly applied areas. I had to include a detail of this fan. The strength in the drawing in person is breathtaking. It appears that the lines are wiped away or scratched out of the surface. It's really impressive in person. Material. Here are a few artists I look at in terms of their use of mixed media in the way that they explore different media. I was first introduced to Shabalala Self in my MFA program. She was a visiting critic. I fell in love with her use of mixed media, particularly the combination of painting, sewing, and printmaking to explore ideas of the Black female body. On the right, Genesis Bellinger is a contemporary surrealist sculptor. She's working in many mediums. Objects become surrogates for the female body, and her palette is heavily inspired by the 1950s. This is just one of many pieces I admire from her. I thought it'd be interesting to follow up Bellinger with Gober because it appears that she may be influenced by his work, or at least she's been compared to him in a few articles that I've read. I chose this piece because of the varied use of material and the different planes created in this sculpture, which brings me back to the idea of a picture within a picture, which you'll see in a few slides is something that I've been thinking a lot about. I think there's a similar thing happening on the right in this Antonio Lopez Garcia piece. The use of mixed media is so engaging in this work, and his use of perspective to create a disorienting his use of perspective creates a disorienting psychological effect. Here's two pieces by Jasper Johns. These were also taken at the Whitney just recently. I've been looking at Johns for over 20 years. I was first introduced to him in my BFA, and I was really drawn by his use of mixed media, the heavy weighted objects against the softer washed out surfaces, many times encaustic, which gives these pieces so much depth. My early works that you'll see in a few slides are very heavily inspired by this type of work. Similarly with Dine and Rauschenberg, I've always enjoyed their combination of dry and wet media, or in this case of Rauschenberg, the idea of assemblage and more three-dimensional qualities to a painting surface. And of course, James Castle. Here are 3 or 4 pieces that I really adore. I'm completely in love with the visceral quality of Castle's work. I'm so excited and inspired by his use of mixed media, and it's something that hasn't inspired me since his work found me. There's an autobiographical quality to these works through the use of found papers and material that wouldn't otherwise be present. I'm fascinated by the idea of the material acting as a time capsule, which I'm quoting from Kristen. We were speaking about his work yesterday. And similarly, this chair is so precisely pieced together, yet you can feel the weight of it, although it's made out of paper and thread. There is nothing concealing his process of its construction, and it's so exciting to look at. Works that make you want to touch them are some of my favorite. I love the comparison of these two works. Side by side, they highlight the versatility of Castle's language. We are looking at very similar subject matter, so distinctly rendered in their own right. I love the water stain on the wallpaper of the figure on the left. It's on what I imagine to be on her apron, or it takes me back to time spent as a child with my grandmother. The type of patterned apron she would wear while she would be cooking for us. That's the thing about Castle's work. They're incredibly relatable and yet so distinctly his. So here we get to my work. I'm going to start with works from the past, primarily from 2013. It was a pivotal time in my art making career at this point. I had moved back from Brooklyn to Barcelona, where I moved after my BFA. And before this point, I was making mostly abstract text-based works on paper. You can see here the heavy nods to Johns, Rauschenberg, and even Twombly. Soon after these works, I decided to study toward my MFA. At this point, I'm in my second year of my MFA program, which created a substantial shift in my process and in my thinking about my work. I was also dealing with similar subject matter: time, loss, grief, home. But I think I began to articulate it a bit more effectively, or at least more uniquely mine, rather than in a similar voice of those who inspired me. In these two pieces in particular, I'm still very interested in the painting functioning as sculpture and pushing the use of mixed media. But I think this is the point where perspective and the use of more flattened spatial planes begin to show up in my work. And I start to lose interest in rendering, which I don't think you ever really see I'm interested in, but it was pushed pretty heavily where I studied my MFA, and it took me a while to kind of redirect myself. Mend, which is on the left, is one of the last pieces I made during my MFA program. And it was at a really stressful and painful time in my life where I was ending my time at school, which makes you have to think about the future. But at the same time, I was faced with a sudden illness, which made planning for the future and the realization of the fragility of time and the lack of control I had on it or on my life in general extremely prominent. I felt very emotional when I made this piece, and I think that's the reason I keep going back to this type of making. But in 2019, I stray away from the constructions for a little bit, and I continued to paint interiors while I processed the changes and all the moves that were happening at that time in my life. I was thinking still about a loss of control, changes in my perception of self, vanity, illness, etc. And these spaces are my self-portraits. Next slide brings you into 2020, which obviously is the year of the pandemic. And I lost the ability to travel to Brooklyn to my studio for health concerns, as I think many artists did. And I began to paint beside my bed in a tiny 700 square foot apartment in Long Island City. And my work drastically shifts in scale, yet with its decrease in size, they become much more experimental, layered, textured, and intimate portals into my life at the time. And I'm going to take you to what I'm doing now. So a year later, after the beginning of the tiny 4x4-inch paintings, I moved from Long Island City to an old farmhouse that was built in 1850 in upstate New York. Even more isolated than I was in my tiny apartment, I am now working solely from home and continue to create my smaller scaled works. These are Absence, A Glow in the Dark, and Only One Left. Since moving upstate, I've become so fascinated by the nighttime. After years of living in cities where you never really experience true darkness because of the artificial lights created in those environments. Our home is so magical at night, and I find myself sitting and observing it most at these times. There's so much history in this space and so many lives lived inside of these walls. Yet the stories it tells at night are so much different than the ones during the day. And so with this and the following work are my narrations of a time spent here. This is a recent piece inspired by my home entitled Blue. Stepping back. Cracked eggs and evergreens. In place of a reflection. These are, again, 4x4, a piece of you still on the left and be still on the right. This one is entitled Before You Go. And now I am at the James Castle House, and I think I've been here 2.5 weeks at this point. And I've come back to the constructions heavily inspired by Castle's mixed media, more sculptural works. This is a recent piece that is in progress. This is the first construction I believe I made when I got here. It's utilizing like the toothpaste box that I brought. I've become kind of a hoarder since being here. I haven't really thrown away any of my recycling. And this is inspired by the view across the street that I have from the studio. I'm pushing myself to work with a lot more texture and pattern. So as you can see on the one on the left, I'm playing more with the idea of pattern work and flattened space. And on the right, inspired by Castle's use of recycled ice cream cartons and the pulpiness of his work, I'm experimenting with a similar surface. These are all 4x4-inch pieces inspired by Boise and the Castle House and the Residency. And that is it. So thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I think Kristen will have it from here.
Yes, thank you so much, Tania. That was great. I love seeing the stuff that you've been doing while you're here and hearing about the stuff that you've been engaging with, like all of the materials. I wonder if you are at all considering combining some of the techniques, like the painting into the collage, like using the actual paper surfaces as you create those kind of washy effects. I'm just curious for my own self.
Like collaging onto the canvas itself?
Or painting onto the collage.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I started today, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? I can go get it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. This one here. That one is more of a combination of the two, where I'm painting on the recycled materials and using less fabric. Yeah, so I think it's starting to mesh a bit.
That's exciting. Cannot wait to see that in person. We have a couple of questions for you. When did you first hear about James Castle?
So it was really interesting. I think it was 2018. And I had posted a collagraph that I did in my MFA program. And an artist who is a friend of a friend in Colombia had made a reference on Instagram saying, wow, have you ever seen Castle's work? It reminds me of his work. And I was like, I'm embarrassed, but no. And I started digging. And once I saw how much we had in common, I became so obsessed with finding out more. And then through finding out more, I found the residency. And then I saw the videos of them reconstructing the house. And I just was mind blown. And I knew that I had to know more, and I had to go to Boise, and I had to be in this residency. And I didn't stop until I got here.
What sort of materials or inspiration do you keep around you while you work, if any?
So right now, I have tons of recycling, like packaging material. I have recycled fabrics. What else do I have around me? I have tons of books here. I mean, because they supplied them. I have tons of Castle's books, and in my studio as well. I like to keep a stack of books of artists who inspire me. I always have good music playing. Yeah, and that's about it.
Curious about your journey to study art and become an artist. When did you decide, yes, this is my path?
I think I knew for a really long time. I mean, I started, my two older sisters were really good at painting, and they were always getting cheered on for it. And you know, me being the middle child, I wanted to outdo them. So, or get some attention too. So I remember in high school, I just became really obsessive, and I would show my mom and be like, look what I did. And she's like, because they weren't very good. So I just didn't stop until they got good. And then my senior year, I had an art professor who really pushed me and would always tell me I'm talented. And I think she's the reason I went to art school. She told me about Pratt at Munson Williams Proctor. So I went on an interview, and I didn't get the first time. So again, I'm very persistent. So I tried again, and I did what they said I needed to do, and I did get in. And I knew the moment that I stepped foot in those dorms and in those classrooms and with those smells that this is what I wanted to do with my life, and I just never stopped.
I love that. Also, see, persistence pays.
Yeah, it is true. I get a lot of no's, but I turn them into yeses. I think with Instagram, it's like, oh, look, this really fun thing has happened. And I think people get confused sometimes because everything looks like all you get is yeses, but there's so many no's.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So just out of curiosity, are either one of your sisters still painting?
No, one of them studied as an art therapist, but now she's veering more away from art therapy and doing more conventional modes of therapy. But I think, she in particular is very interested in art still, and the other one as well. And now her child is really interested in drawing and painting. So it's kind of a fun full circle.
That's great. Keeping
Yeah,
the legacy alive.
for
Um,
sure.
we have another question. Is this your first time to Boise? And what are your first thoughts about the West or Idaho, Boise in particular? What's standing out to you? Landscape, built environment wise, like what's your first impression?
I'm actually really shocked. It was really funny. Every time I told someone that I was going to do a residency in Boise, the first thing they said, and I don't know if this is like a New Yorker thing, but they were just like, "Oh, so you're gonna come back with paintings of cows and farmland?" And I don't even know. And I was just like, "Wait a second. I think isn't Boise a city? I'm so confused. Why does everyone keep saying this to me?" So I think that was the first thing that I noticed. I'm like, wait a second, this is not all cows and farmland. Um, it's really amazing. Everyone is so friendly. The weather is so much better than New York. The thing that I've noticed most is the light here is so special. Like when the sun rises in the morning, it's this soft violet, pink, hazy color. And when it's setting, it starts to do a similar thing. And the mountains here are so different than the ones in the Northeast. So I've really fallen in love with it.
Is the light quality, what's it like in New York where you live?
I mean, I'm in the Catskills right now, so the sunsets they're breathtaking. But they're just it's a different light. Like right now it's gray and gloomy, and winters are kind of dreary. So it's been kind of nice to kind of hop away from it. I'm like, oh, it feels like spring here.
Yeah, you've been here for some lovely winter weather.
Yeah, I was very upset when I woke up to snow the other day.
Then it was
I'm like,
gone by noon, you know. We have a note from Terry Shoresman, who you have yet to meet, but I will be very excited for you guys to meet. She was the director of the Arts and History Department since its very beginning, and she just retired. So we will have her come by. She said, "Welcome to Boise. Love your work and look forward to seeing what else you produce while at the Castle House." So
thank you. Oh, I can't wait to meet you.
um, I am just curious, when you were talking about like finding out about the Castle House and basically deciding that you had to do it, there seemed to be a really strong relationship with the idea of using interiors and kind of the spaces that surround you to capture memory. And
Mhm.
this house, that like so much of the story around it is these layers, like the layers of history and that kind of the memory that the house holds of the lives that were lived inside of it. And I'm just curious if that was present in your mind when you first found out about it.
About the residency?
Mhm.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there was so much history in this building, and I think just being in the house, the same house of someone who had such an amazing creative life in it, I just couldn't wait to see what that would breathe onto me. Like I remember one of the first days. I mean, it's scary, like starting your practice in a new space. And I just remember having a moment just being like, James, help me out. And like, I think there is, like, it sounds totally crazy, but I think that there is such a vibrant energy just in this space, and like going out to the shed and just spending some time like looking through the like wood fenced surface and just imagining what it was like creating in there. And I don't know, there's something really special about being able to do that.
It's a wonderful creative space, and not only that it was the site of where Castle lived for so long, but also this beautiful growing legacy within the residency itself. Like everyone who comes through kind of infuses something new into it, and so it's always really exciting to kind of see that energy impact what's happening next.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even seeing things and recognizing why he did things certain ways, like I really love the way that he draws and renders trees. And it's interesting because as I'm riding the bike through town, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like I understand why the trees are shaped that way, and I see them similarly. So it's just a really special experience that you just don't get by like flipping through a book, or I don't know. I feel very lucky to be able to experience it.
That's amazing. We have a few more questions. So you talk about biography being a big part of your work. How do you see that fitting into the work at the JCH?
So it's interesting. I've been using inspiration, like one that I'm working on today. I'm taking a window from the trailer, but as I step into the trailer and I look through the window, what I'm seeing through the window is a reflection of my own home. So it's kind of that idea I was talking about earlier, being in one space physically, but like mentally, you're not there and you're trying to remember your home and your space. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about the work that I'm going to be making here so far, anyway.
I love that. I also am really curious to see how your experience being away from your home for such a long time impacts the way you see it when you go back.
Oh, for sure.
It will
I think,
completely different.
yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of work to be made, like here and there, about this whole experience. So I'm excited.
Uh, we have another question. In the works that you started making, that tile pattern looks so cool. Are patterns something that you usually play with?
The tile pattern has been since moving into the house that we're in now. There is a repetition of that pattern throughout my house. So since being there, yes, and the more that I do it, the more that I'm just really excited by putting pattern in my work. So I think it's something that scared me before, but the more I do it, the more I love it. So that fear is kind of like going away. And so, yeah, I think it'll be here to stay.
I love it. It's very dynamic in your work.
Oh, thank you.
I think that the pattern, especially, you play with perspective so nicely, and that pattern really kind of illuminates that perspectival challenge that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And I love the shower curtain, the pattern of the shower.
Oh, I was so, that was so like challenging for me, because you have those moments where you're like, can I do this? And then I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. So I was really happy with that piece. So
it's great. We've got a question. I think you've answered it more or less already, but if you want to add anything, have you seen the shed and trailer yet?
So I have seen the trailer and I've been inside of it, but I have not been inside of the shed, Kristen. So I've been like creeping through because it's in, for people who haven't been here, it's like the shed is like enclosed in a wooden structure to protect it. So I've kind of like looked through it, and it's kind of cool because it creates these like layers of windowed spaces. It's really interesting.
You'll see it
I hope
on the inside. I promise. I'll take care. So your sewn and collage work are lovely. When did sewing come into your work?
Thank you. So that happened the first time in 2017. I was going through a very difficult time in my personal life. And I was about to graduate and life got hairy and I got very frustrated and I took a painting and I tore it up and then I cried and I was like, why did I do that? And then I began to mend it. And then through that mending, I created a new work and it was healing on so many levels. So it first began there. And I think, my emotional connection to it kind of scared me and I let it go. And then I went to the Golden Residency in New Berlin, I think 2018. And then I started it again more consistently. So I think since 2018, I've been doing it. It's just, I think that's where like with the sewn stuff, I keep it more to myself. So like I have it in a drawer in my studio. And when I do it, I keep it really private. So this is the first time I'm like really sharing it with people. I think at the Golden Residency, I did a little bit. They were more in progress, but then when I finished them, I hid them again. So they're coming out slowly. Thanks to the cheering on of Kenzie and Kristen.
They're amazing. They're such beautiful works. Seeing them in person is really a game changer. I'm also curious, so talking about the Golden Residency, and we've talked a little bit about this, you've done several residencies. How have your previous residencies impacted your work?
I think it gives my work, with the Golden one in particular, it gave me such a huge boost of confidence. I think I just have such a love for material and surface and texture. And there you have just like, it's like you just went to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like they're like, you want 20 gallons of gesso? Like have at it and do whatever you want with it. So, and it was funny because, just paint is expensive. And for years I had been like just little tiny dots of paint so I didn't waste anything, and they were kind of like, what are you doing, so it pushed me to use more paint, which makes your paintings better, and like pre-mix my palettes, which helps like substantially. So if you go into my studio back at home, like I have like so many pre-mixed colors that I've mixed myself, and so I think that one in particular, just like I was like, oh, I do know what I'm doing, and I can do this the way I want to do it and make my life easier. And the work changed a lot too after that. I think technically a bit. So I think every residency kind of does something for you, whether it's leave you with a better network of friends or I hope I answered that.
With the Golden Residency, outside of kind of the freedom to use more materials, being in an environment where you were like seeing all of these things being created, did that change your relationship to your materials?
Oh my God, yes, because it's funny, the cheaper you are with materials, like by me trying to save money, I was actually losing more money. Because acrylic dries quickly. So if I make a little pile of acrylic and I don't use it within that period of time that it dries, like that's garbage. And then you do it again, garbage. And so like that kept happening, but now I'll make like that much and I'm not losing the paint, like it lasts until the jar is done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it completely changed the work. Consistency of palette. I feel like I lost my route on that one. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Perfect swing.
Okay.
We have another question here. Can you talk about living and working in the space, the James Castle House? What is your process like moving through the day? Have you do you have set goals and expectations for yourself for your time while you're on site? And do non-art making practices play a role in your process, like reading and cooking and all the daily life kind of stuff, going for walks?
So yeah, I think I am learning that I need to force myself to leave in the morning. It helps so much. So I've been trying to get out at least once a day for some sort of exercise, like bike riding or walking and like looking around the neighborhood, because I can get very I tend to isolate, and I will just like work 24/7 until I drive myself a little crazy. So yeah, I've been trying to like get up, go for a walk, or at some point. And then yeah, coffee has a big you know, contributing factor in my practice. I get up, I make my coffee, I go do some work, I shower, have like my second coffee, do some more work. And so yeah, it's been really great. Like I was telling Kristen, it's kind of crazy like living and working in the same space, because I find myself going to bed and being like, wait, I should do this, I should do that, and then I have an idea for this, and I'll be like, no, turn off. So I think that's the only like maybe bad thing, is that I've had problems like turning my head off. But which is also really exciting, because when do you have time to just be like, oh, I have this idea, let me run out real quick. Yeah, so I just think it's really exciting.
So your coffee ritual, which we've talked about a few times, but I love, so we just talk a little bit about the way you make coffee. And one thing I love about it in particular is that it is something that you very definitely took from your life into this experience.
Yeah, I had to have the coffee the way that I've had it.
Yeah.
So I come from an Italian Spanish family, and in the cooking portion of our life, I think, you know, my mom is Italian, and so a lot of the cuisine that I eat is Italian. And so we have one of the stovetop espresso percolators. And so Kristen had asked me like, oh, what do you need to be comfortable in the kitchen? I was like, I definitely need an espresso maker for the stovetop. And so then my partner ended up sending me one. So yeah, that's my coffee. But Kristen also taught me how to use the French press, which I have had a French press and just had no idea how to use it, but I feel very proud of myself that I've learned.
I mean, as long as you've got coffee options.
I know, I have many options
now. We have a question about, so you started working small during the pandemic. Do you plan to stay small or go big while you're at the Castle House?
No, I keep telling myself I'm gonna go bigger. I'm just really happy working small right now. Yeah, they just give you so much room to experiment. Yeah, I don't see myself getting too big anytime soon. The biggest that I have been working is 12 by 12. Yeah, I don't see myself going much bigger than 12 by 12 at the moment.
That's a good size.
Yeah.
Not tiny. Do you share your studio with anyone in New York, or is it just yours solo?
No, it's mine solo, and since moving upstate, it's I can't even believe it's my studio. In Brooklyn, it's like for the same price, I would be in like a windowless shack. So it's been pretty amazing to have my own space, and yeah, so I'm fortunate to have it by myself right now.
Do you feel like you thrive on kind of the solitude versus like having people in a studio experience that are giving you feedback, or like?
See, I like to have people in the building that I can turn to just to like kind of bounce ideas off of each other. But if I have someone in the same space, I get so distracted, whether it be by their palette or their music, or, you know, I'm easily distracted and I like to talk. So, you know, I had a studio with my friend back in Long Island City, and like I adore her, but it's just like, you know, you just get so like comfortable, and then you want to go eat, and you know, you get distracted. So I just think I'm way more productive when I get in my head, and yeah, but
So hopefully
sharing
this will be a good, productive experience for you.
what just
I said, hopefully this will be a good and productive experience for you.
oh, for sure. I mean, it's just crazy how much you can get done when you live and work in the same space.
I feel like I'm distracting you a lot, but that's okay.
Well,
that'll
no, I do need human interaction a little bit.
some human interaction at all. We have another question. What do you expect your biggest takeaway to be from your time and experience at the James Castle House?
Ooh, hard question.
Good question.
Wait, what do you think? Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
What do you expect your biggest takeaway to be from your time and experience at the James Castle House?
Oh, you have stumped me, whoever said that. I think that this is like a very important trip for me, for like many personal reasons. I feel like I've already taken away so much. Like I had just talked to a sister who was like, I feel like you needed this so much. And like, I really do. It's kind of filling me with an energy that I think, you know, through a pandemic, and, you know, you just kind of like lose that energy. And I just feel like it's starting to like, I don't know, make me feel like pre-pandemic feeling and like just inspired, and yeah, I don't know. I need some more time here to fully answer that question. I think that's
Okay.
a good question.
We'll make note of that and make you answer it at the final presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't answer it, but I'm sorry, I'll answer it.
I mean, the answer will be, you know, much more complete, I think, at that point. But I
Yeah,
will say, you know, just from what I've seen so far, you seem to be someone who really takes inspiration from everything in your environment. So, you know, in the first couple of weeks, it's already been incredible. I cannot even imagine all of the things that you're going to have made and thought and done by the time you're through this residency.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to see what happens. I mean, already it's just so inspiring, and just having like headspace again with no external pressures is great.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
All right, we have one more question, but I'm actually going to go ahead and answer that myself as I thank you so much again, Tania, for your time. Thanks for sharing all of this with us. It's incredible. It's so great to see where you're coming from and like what, you know, what you're responding to as you move forward from here.
Yeah,
So the question specifically was about whether or not you're going to have open studios. And I would just like to say, yes, Tania is going to have open studios. We're really, really excited to be able to do some more engagement with Tania, and hopefully more things in person than we've done for quite a while. So she will be hosting 3 open studios in the first 3 Saturdays of March. So March 5th, 12th, and 19th from 2 to 3 p.m. And those will be in person. It'd be great if you're interested in coming down and seeing her work in person and actually getting to meet her. It will be a lot of fun. And the previously mentioned final presentation is going to take place in a hybrid environment. So it will be in person inside the gallery. It will also be online on Zoom. So either, you know, people in town and out, we really hope you can join us for that. That will be March 31st from 6 to 7 p.m. And all of these events are on our website. So, any information you need, any links you need, you can find them on jamescastlehouse.org. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tania, so much for sharing. We are so excited to have you at Castle House, and I think it's going to be a delightful next couple of months.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jeff, for interpreting tonight's presentation. It's always a pleasure to work with you. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope that you will join us for future events and come back for the events that we have with Tania, and we will see you again soon.